other than, no, let me go back on that, almost. He took a lot of ridicule and joking from the fire department. He took it, but he gave it back to us just as good. Today, we just want to remember him, tell stories about him, how you met him. We're going to ask everybody out there if they've got a story about Terry, about how you met him. Because I'm sure, if anything, as a stranger, he approached you and introduced himself. We met Terry as a fire department, probably 6 years ago when actually his house caught on fire. It wasn't too long after that his wife Betty passed away. At that point, we recruited Terry real hard to join the fire department. His opposition was, I'm too old. I can't do that. My argument to that was, can you run a pump on the truck? Can you drive a truck? He answered yes, and I told him that's all I needed. I needed somebody to get equipment there and run the equipment. I didn't expect him to go in and fight a fire. And that's what he did. Didn't matter what time, night or day, he tried to make every single call, not only fire, but EMS. And for that, we're very thankful. So I think the family wants to say a few words. I'm going to ask them up. Come on, Amber. And then after the family speaks, like I said, we will ask for tales and stories of Terry.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe take that.
Take this.
Yeah, that's fine. Either one.
Okay. I am Amber McDaniel. For those of you who don't know me by name, I'm Keith's wife, or the gardener. I'm his wife. Keith went every weekend to go mow Terry's yard. And so a lot of people, hey, you're that guy that mows his yard. Yeah, no, that was his son. And I married his son, and I married him, and he was a great guy. I want to say thank you, first of all, to Heber Springs Baptist Church. Thank you all. Y'all have been amazing. Mike and Billy and the Tumbling Shoals Fire Department, we really appreciate y'all. Y'all have been great. Y'all made this a lot easier. Keith and I have only been married a year, so I didn't know Terry as long as some of y'all did. But we all have a Terry story. I'm sure y'all can think of 100 or more. And the hard part is determining which one to tell first. But if you didn't meet Terry, you truly missed out on meeting one of the best men in the world. The first time I met Terry, Keith brought me to the house, and he swings the door open, and he says, "That's not the one you brought last week." And he was actually the one that proposed to me. Keith didn't. In fact, his words were, "Would you take this butthole off my hands?" And one of the things that made him really fun is he didn't filter anything. I I've met everybody at the VFW. I may not know your name, but I've heard of you. I've met everybody in the fire department. I feel like I know the entire town of Heber Springs. We heard about Missy and her baby every week we came. She's had the longest pregnancy I've ever heard of. I never thought she'd have Ray's baby. He loved eating with Mike and Billy. He loved you guys with all his heart. He loved driving cars with Jim, Margie, and his twin, Gary. And I would like to apologize to anybody that received a text from me about the goings-on, because nothing in his phone was actually saved. The only reason my number was saved in his phone is because I saved it under my name. So all of you were just numbers, and I was like, well, okay, he called these people pretty regularly, so they must know him. Here you go. It was it was an adventure being with him. He was never without a smile, and I don't know a waitress he didn't hug. The world needs more Terry Lapples in it. I hope that all of you have either recorded your stories or sent us your Terry stories. Again, that makes this just a little bit easier. So we really appreciate it. We appreciate you helping celebrate his life. If you don't have a relationship with Jesus, you met him when you met Terry. The Bible repeatedly tells us to love our neighbors. Matthew 19:19, Matthew 22:39, Leviticus 19:18, Luke 10:27. Over and over, the Bible tells us to love our neighbor, love God, and love others. Every other directive in the Bible is just pointing to those two. Nothing is more important. Love God and love others. Dad was a model of this. He loved everybody. The Bible says that the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. These aren't my words. This is from Galatians 5:14. Terry Lapple was a model of Jesus. If you love Terry, love everyone you come into contact with as if you were loving yourself. We should all be so blessed to have someone say that we are like Terry Lapple. Thank you.
First time I met Terry, he asked me if he could marry my mom. And I told him, what if I said no? He said he'd whoop me and marry her anyway. So he ended up marrying my mom. But I got back at him because I spent all night on their honeymoon. I didn't let them go out and go home. I took them out and enjoyed the night with them. Terry was an unusual man. We've had a stepdad, a father, and Terry was our other stepdad. Out of all my life, his heart was the biggest heart that I've ever seen in a man. He had a heart of a lion. He'd give you the shirt off his back. He was always having something nice to say about somebody. I'm gonna miss him. I loved him. I know he's in a better place with my mom. And that's what I've come for. It's not for his funeral, but for him going home. And I thank God that he's with my mom now because I know he's happy. Thank you.
Terry Lapple wasn't my biological dad, but he was my father. You've heard the saying, anybody can be a dad. It takes a heck of a man to be a father. I used heck as an optical word. Through life, he had his little quirks and tried to help you out as he could. But in the end, him and my mom became my friends. And I don't know how many of you share that with your families, but to go from your father to your friend and stay that way for the rest of your life, it was amazing. I loved him to death. I mean, there's nothing I wouldn't do for him. When I was younger, not knowing which way I was going, he got me on at the post office. I was staying with them, and 5 o'clock in the morning, he kicks the bed, let's go. I was like, we gotta be there till 7, dude. I know, come on. We get up, eat breakfast, still leaving. A drive took 10 minutes, an hour before we needed to be there. If you ever told my dad, hey, we need you here at 8 o'clock, look out your door at 7:30. He was there in your driveway. This is something I carry on till today. I run a plumbing or water utility, and I am there, the first one there and the last one out, just like my dad was. He instilled it in me then, and I just carried it on. Like my oldest brother said, my dad loved my mom. And someone came up since this has gone on and said that they loved my dad, but it was so sad how he'd go out to the cemetery 4 or 5 times a week. When they got together, it was like 2 kids. You couldn't keep them apart. I remember one time we were at Silver Dollar City, and they were behind me cutting up and holding hands and kissing, and I was like, hey, I'll separate you, or I'll take you back to the truck. And they were like, okay, take me back to the truck, take us back. You can go do what we want. Every morning and every night, my dad told my mom how much he loved her. And that's what that was. Though people sing it as grieving, and he was just carrying on his relationship with my mom, showing her how much he loved her. If we all could love our spouses, our kids, and our family that much, we'd be better off. Like Amber said, my dad, and Terry said, my dad was a giving man. You didn't have to ask, you just expected, because he was there all the time. All the stories for all the years go through my mind, but the one that gets me the most is after he moved up here. I come to his house to help him out, and he asked me for a favor, and I was like, sure, Dad, what do you want? And he says, I need $100. I was like, okay, you broke? He said, well, the guy at the end of the road needed $100, and all I had was $50, so I gave it to him. I was like, you gave away all your money. He goes, well, I get paid Tuesday. I was like, okay. He said, well, I didn't have the 100, so I gave him what I had. And that's the guy he was. He'd give you everything he had. So I reached in my wallet, and I gave him $100. I started out the door, started in the yard, and I said, hey, next time don't give away all your money. He said, I didn't. He held up the $100 that I gave him. I was like, no, now you're working on mine. He was just that guy. I'd like to thank you all for being here. This is rough for our family, but it's really rough because it hadn't been that long ago since my mom passed. And I was still mourning her. But please believe me, if you knew my dad, he just wasn't a friend to him. He loved you all, each and every one of you. And that's like Amber said, we never were without stories. We know you all without meeting you. And so he thought the world of everybody. And this world means a lot more Terry Lapples than it does me, because there'd be a better place to be. Thank you all for showing up.
We all know stories about Terry, and the family wants to hear them, no matter what they are. They want to see how he affected your life. Probably one of the first ones that we know of that we gave him the hardest time on is our department called him air brakes. We're responding to a wreck scene out on Highway 25. He gets the engine there. We didn't know if we needed extrication or what. Halfway get it cleaned up, I go to move the truck out of the way for a wrecker to come in, reach in. Air brakes aren't set. The problem with the fire truck, it has park, or there is no park gear. It's reverse, neutral, and drive. There's a 50,000-pound truck parked on an incline with no brakes set. So I got on to Terry about it. His comment was, well, it didn't move anywhere. And I said, well, I'm glad, because the 2 state troopers and the county officer that was parked behind you, we didn't need to be pulling their cars out of the ditch. So the name air brake stuck with him. And I got it around to some people in the public. And that's actually how Keith found out the story, because they were probably rustic eating breakfast. Always. He walked in, somebody walked in and said, hey, air brake. Keith got a questioning look on his face, and Terry just kind of ducked his head. Oh no, I've got to tell the story. So that's kind of how Keith found out that. About 2 to 3 months later, he responds to a fire. He takes the truck. I go personal vehicle. I show up, and something's not right with the truck. I get out, and I start walking behind it, rolling a cord up. Who brought the truck? Terry goes, I did. Now, Terry, next time you may want to unplug it from the station. What do you mean? I said, extension cord's plugged in. And I think he questions, when did you start plugging the trucks in? Terry, if you look, every truck in every station is plugged in to battery chargers. Oh, okay. But that was, just Terry. I mean, I could go on and on with stories. But I want to hear from some other people on the department. Y'all. Because y'all are the ones that he really thought a lot of. Anybody got a story they want to start with? You don't have to come up here. We'll bring a microphone to you. Come on. I know you've got a story.
Too many of them.
Yeah, we do. The fire department has too many of them, but some are not appropriate.
Is it turned on?
Green light on? Yep.
Okay, so to back Mike up as far as the air brake is concerned, most of you know Terry absolutely loved to shuttle us around on our ambulances. When we got our larger ambulance, that thing has very touchy brakes. I think he had cinder blocks for feet. Yeah, I say this jokingly, but he provided, a great service to us, kept us safe. We were always comfortable with Terry driving us around, allowing us to provide patient care until we got that big ambulance. To him, it was a go-kart. He's little, it's big. He was on top of the world. One day we were transporting a patient to the ambulance, or to the hospital rather, and I'm sitting on the bench seat which goes along the back edge of the gurney. And it's a long bench, probably about 6.5 feet long, and I was sitting on one side of it doing something, and Terry decided that he was going to tap the brakes. Well, if you've been in the back of an ambulance and feel the brakes being tapped and you're not ready for it, what happens? Well, I slid from one side of the ambulance all the way down the bench seat, ended up on the other side, and I said, Terry, what are you doing? Oh, these brakes are touchy. Yeah, they're touchy, all right. So we get to the hospital, and he flips around, same thing. He slid me right back where I was. I get out, I said, Terry, what are you doing? You can use one toe. He says, but it's a big pedal. I said, well, think about having an egg underneath your foot. He says, then I'd break it. He said, what were you doing back there moving around? I said, you were sliding me? No, I wasn't. So that's just one of many, many stories. Another one, again, going along with the air brake discussion that we're having. We got a medical call, showed up at the station. Terry, living in close proximity, he was there first. He jumps in our ambulance. Obviously, it has air brakes on it. He's got that thing in drive, and you can hear that engine whining. It won't go anywhere. I'm looking at Terry, and he's frustrated and throwing his hands up in the air, and I climb in the passenger seat, and I'm like, let's go, Terry. He says, it won't move. What do you mean it won't move? It won't go anywhere. It's stuck. Okay. Well, put it in drive. It's in park. He puts it in drive, and he stomps on the accelerator, and it wobbed and just sitting there. Terry just puts it back in park. He says, I'm not going. Come on, Terry, I'll drive. So he gets out and runs around. I get in the driver's seat, and normal, right? Put it in drive, push the air brake button in, and we pull out of the station. Terry looks at me, and he said, well, I'm not going to say it in here, but it was a 3-letter word. He called me a smart butt, but wasn't a butt. So he chewed my ear all the way to that call. But those are the stories that we have with Terry. I've witnessed him on calls. Terry fell into a routine. His compassion and ability to build rapport with people, with family members, his likability assisted us more than he could ever know. When we were in critical points caring for people, whether on an accident scene or with a little old lady having a bad way to go, Terry was able to rationalize with that person and reach out to them, reach out to the family members, and give them a sense of comfort while we're executing our job. A lot of places don't have that. They don't have Terry. We're going to tremendously miss him because he's irreplaceable. Thank you for sharing him with us. I know you didn't have much of a choice. It took us a couple of years to get him convinced to come back and play with us, but once we did, he was all in, and you all know that. So it's kind of just a couple of stories. So come on, stand up. I had to do this. You're doing it.
All right, well, I don't have an air brake story, but I do have waitress stories, so. So anybody that knew Terry knew that he hit just about every restaurant in town just about every day. Post office, the water department, the banks, and anywhere else that he could find somebody to talk to. And obvious, he made an impression on everybody, but we decided last Saturday morning that we were going to go to breakfast. Jason and I get together, and we're like, let's go get Terry. So we pull up in Jason's truck, we honk the horn, we go out, knock on the door, he comes stumbling in his bathrobe and his underwear, opens the door, scared to death probably because we startled him awake. Said, let's go to breakfast. Okay, give me a minute, I got to get my pants on. So we left, we go get the ambulance, we come back, we pick him up. He's ready to go. He's engaged now. We go by, we do the same thing to Mike. Luckily, Mike had pants on. We load him up. We go to DJ's in Drasco, which we had never been before, as a group to go eat breakfast, and Terry met a new waitress. And that waitress wasn't having anything to do with Terry. She wandered off to the other side of the room, and we're eating breakfast, and all of a sudden, Terry's gone. And Terry's got this girl hemmed up in a corner, and he's telling her about first of all, every time he talked to a waitress or anybody else, he led with his wife, who he adored. Everybody knows that. He's telling them about the fire department and all the calls that he's been on and all this other stuff. And about 15 minutes goes by, he comes back and sits down. Well, Terry, did you get everything out that you needed to get out? Yeah. Did you tell her about your Jeep? No, I forgot. And off he goes. Anyway, at the end of breakfast, he gets up, or we all get up to leave. He goes and buys our breakfast. We're arguing with him. We're arguing with each other, and then he's gone. Where'd he go? He's hugging every woman in the restaurant. Everybody that's in there eating, all the waitresses, I think he even got the cook in the back. So And that's just one of the many stories that we have, fun times that we've had with him. We're really going to miss him.
Anybody else? Another story about that. Tell us how you met him.
I'm going. Oh, no. I had to use the microphone. You've got to use one, too.
Bad knees is all. Okay, y'all. My name is Jan Stanley. I've been here for 16 years, and I've known Terry the whole time he was here from the VFW. And I was sitting there one afternoon. Usually go when I get off work. I don't go before I go to work. It's not open anyway. But anyway, I go by there, and he's sitting over there by himself, and I thought, well, man, I need to go talk to this man. He looks like he needs to meet somebody. He needs a friend. So I went over there, and we just started talking. First thing he said, we started talking about Betty. I said, yeah, well, I lost my husband in 2011, and he said, yeah, I'm going to miss him. He said, I see you're still wearing your wedding ring. I said, yeah. And you're still wearing yours? He said, well, I will be until the day I meet her again. And I just remember every day we talk, and the last thing he'd said to me the other day, Monday, he said, bye, old lady. I said, bye, old man. That was our thing now, because I'm only about 15 years younger than he is. But anyway, that's how I knew Terry. He was my best friend, and he will be missed by all of us. And I just want to say it was nice meeting all of y'all and Terry's family. And I've talked to Keith for a long time. And anyway, just wanted to let y'all know I love him very much. I'm glad I got through this.
I'm not going to stand on the chair, but I'm here. I got a phone call from my insurance man a couple of years back and said, hey, I've got a man that needs somebody to help him. I was like, okay. So he gave me his number, and I called Terry. I told him who I was. I'm Anita. Asked if I could come over the next morning to meet him and everything. He said, sure, babe. Come on. What time will you be here? I said, well, what's too early? He said, 6. I was like, okay. He said, unless I go out on a call. I was like, okay. So I showed up about 7:30. He comes staggering to the door with his robe and his boxers on, pushes open the glass door and says, hey, babe, I forgot you were coming. Come on in. So I go in, and he's showing me his house. And first thing he did was start opening up photo albums, introducing me to his family, to his Betty, and to his boys. And he told me about how they met and how she was the love of his life, and that how much he just was so happy that God gave her and her boys to him. Then he took me and showed me pictures of the grandkids, and then I met Baby, and then he's just showing me all these different things. And this was where she did her sewing, and this is where my Betty did this, and everywhere he showed me, he was telling me his family. He was introducing me to all of y'all, and whatever, and then he says, now you don't have to mess with anything here. This is just like she wanted it. And I was like, well, that's not a problem. By the way, I cleaned his house. But everywhere was family, and everywhere was Betty. And then he showed me all the little things from the war, and then he went off into short stories, but he didn't go into big stories about his time of service. Then he went off into telling me all about the post office and the fire departments and working accidents and stuff. And I just stood there, you know, and it was like going down memory lane. And immediately he's like, now, look, I need to know what day you can come, how often you can come, and here's the key. He'd never laid eyes on me before, and the man's handing me over his house key. But I only ever heard him say one cuss word over the past couple of years. And then he apologized for that. And I was like, oh, I've heard worse. He says, I bet you have. But, you know, but my thing is, Terry was a lovable man. He was a kind man. He loved all of everybody he introduced me to on that one single solitary day. And when his vehicle didn't move, last Tuesday, when I went into Bible study, I told my son, I says, I'm going in. And when I saw that the coffee table was moved, I said, an ambulance has been here. I knew something had happened. So I got hold of a friend of mine that knows these people, and I got hold of Justin, and I found out. Yeah, but I left a note on the door saying I'd been there. Yeah. But my heart sank and my heart breaks. But he loved everybody and all the waitresses. He never met a stranger that he didn't tell me something about them. But I appreciate the opportunity to have known him and to have loved him. He was very wonderful to me.
Department for a really long time, and when Terry came on board, it was right before Christmas. We were doing a Christmas party for all the firemen and the first responders, and well, I was the decorator. So I was decorating the tables, and guess who came early? Terry. Well, y'all don't know this, but he is a great decorator. So here I am decorating the tables, getting them all festive for the dinner, and here comes Terry, gives me a hug. He's never seen me before. But he said, darling, you look like you need some help. And I said, you bet I do. He just joined in, tell me what to do, and I just said, we need to do this on all these tables. He was perfect. He had a really good eye for that kind of stuff. Well, that wasn't the last time he helped me decorate either. So every time after that, we would have a fundraiser and we decorated for anything. Where was Terry? Right beside me, helping me decorate. So anyway, that was the first time I met him. And of course, I've got tons of stories too. But one day I called him, and it was in November, the 1st of November. In 2019. And I said, Terry, what are you doing? And he said, I'm just waiting around for you to tell me what to do. And I said, okay, I'm going to tell you. I need you at the courthouse at 5 o'clock. And he said, okay, I'll be there. Didn't ask me why or nothing. He was there in his Jeep. I drove up beside of him when I got off work. And I said, I need you to come out here and stand by a flag. And they had all the field of heroes, the flags set up in front of the courthouse. So anyway, that's the first time I ever seen tears come to his eyes. And whenever I took his picture beside that flag. And anyway, that was just the special moments that I've had with Terry, plus a million hugs and that I'm going to miss. And so.
I don't know if y'all saw the pictures or not before we came in, but there are some from our wedding. And I'd just like to point out, I don't know if you saw him standing next to Keith, and it was very somber. And then when he was standing next to me, it was all smiles. Just want to point that out. Come on, guys. I know y'all got a story. I know you've got a story.
I don't know if y'all know, but Terry always called me his twin brother. And as size of I am, we had a restaurant and stuff, and he'd tell the waitress, "Yeah, we're twin brothers," and they'd say, "You sure?" And Terry and I always sit in the back, and Margie and Jim was up front. When we go after cars and pick them up for the Peyton Select, and so I would we'd kid each other constantly. And Terry, he'd come back with some stuff going, "What?" But he was such a close friend of mine, and since he started to work for Peyton's, he just really was a likable person, and I miss him very much. And I hope that all of y'all have memories of him, and I'll cherish his memory and his friendship. Thank y'all very much.
And that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love Terry very much, and wish you're going to miss him, because we have driven lots of miles together. And I would sit up there and drive, and Gary and Terry would be in the back seat, and they would be arguing back and forth about who knows what. And I wouldn't look around. I'd just drive straight on down the road, just like I'm supposed to. And that's why Terry would say, "Now that's funny." Anyway, thank y'all.
Anybody else? And I will tell you, every story that he told Keith and I ended with, "We sure do have fun together." We sure do have fun together. We heard that every week, about 500 times, more or less.
Hey, Amber, it's his other Amber.
Other Amber.
So, my husband's on the department, and our family loved Terry. He meant so much to us. He helped my husband do so many things, and he always supported him. He was a bright spot for us. Even our kids adored him. This one hardly ever gives a person a hug, but she would hug Terry without question. And we met him at Smokehouse one day. He was eating alone. It was the last time we got to see him, and she hugged him, and she told me last night, if I knew that was the last time I was going to get to hug him. We never know. So we all need to be like Terry and be a hugger, because that may be your last hug. But when he met Amber, he told me, he said, "I can remember your name now." I was like, "Terry, now come on. Yeah, I know you know my name. I've known you for years, and I'm kind of unforgettable." And he's like, "My daughter-in-law's name is Amber, so I can remember it now." Like, okay, Terry, I'm still your favorite Amber. I wasn't.
Anybody else?
My name is Kay, and I live in Tumbling Shoals, real close to the old Kennedy house where Mr. Terry and Miss Betty purchased that home and moved several years ago. I'm representing the post office. I don't work at the post office anymore, but the post office during that time was one of the routine hot spots that he would stop by in. And the times that I covered for the postmaster there, he would come in about 9:30 before he would head to the Rustic for breakfast. He had his set schedule. And he knew when the mail would get delivered to Tumbling Shoals, and it would get cased in his mailbox, and he would come by and walk in the door, and his standard greeting was, "Well, hello, sweetie." And he'd have that kind of cocked grin on his face, and he'd check his mail, or else we would just hand it to him. And after Miss Betty passed, he would come and talk about that, and talk about his loss, and talk about how much he missed her. And of course, there were lots of mail with her name on it, catalogs and such. And he'd talk about how she'd like those catalogs and like to order different things. And we'd ask him, you know, "Mr. Terry, do you want us to kind of cull that out?" And he goes, no. It would remind him of her and all the beautiful things she liked to look for in those magazines. Now, they used to, when I left and Chris took over at the Tumbling Shoals Post Office, and my husband, who's rather sparky, and Mr. Terry and Chris and another cousin of mine, Steve, would hang out in front of the post office and, you know, chew the fat for 30 minutes and smoke cigarettes and tell lies and laugh and joke and have a good time. And that became part of the routine, is to go meet and greet at the post office, go outside where everybody could share a cigarette and a story before he would head and have breakfast. So we love Mr. Terry, and we know that he's in a better place, and he's with Miss Betty, and we'll miss him, but he's in our hearts. All the positivity and love that he shared. So thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm going to sit down. So my name is Taylor, and I knew Terry for a couple years before I started working at the VFW as a bartender. And so he'd already loved me, of course, you know, because he loves everybody. And I don't know if you know this, but he had a little dirty side, okay? He would come into the bar, and he always wanted a DP. I don't know why he called Dr. Pepper DP, but he did. And so I'd always give him a straw, because I gave him hell all the time. He gave it back just as much. And I'd always put a straw in his mug, and he'd go, "Honey, I don't suck. That's your job." I had to just brighten y'all's day up.
Again, I want to thank you for all of your stories. I was reading Keith, the Tumbling Shoals Facebook page, all the messages that everybody sent, well-wishing and you know. And I'd read the name, and then I'd read what they said. And Keith went, after about, I don't know, 10 or 15, he went, "Wait, do you see the pattern here?" I went, "What, they're sorry for her loss?" He said, "No, they're all women." And literally, out of like 190 some odd comments, there were 2 guys. Anybody else?
Well, as everybody can see, there's a lot of stories out there about Terry. What a good person he was, how he cared about everybody else. Like I said, he would give you the shirt off of his back. He'd give you his last dollar. And then take keys. No.
Yeah, Keith, thanks for buying breakfast.
Yeah, he paid for breakfast that day. But we're all going to miss Terry. But he is in a better place. He's with his wife Betty, who there were comments that he made all the time that he was ready to go be with her. So he's there with her now, looking down on us. Most of us are in new shirts because we knew Terry didn't want coats and ties. It just wasn't him. He's really, I mean, he was not only a friend, but he was family. I think he was to everybody here. So with that, Josh, if you will.
So, Keith and Amber, my name is Josh Raymold. I'm the EMS director at Tumbling Shoals. The Arkansas EMT Association couldn't be here today, but they want to present you this flag. And I've got stories of Terry, but none of them can be repeated in church because he and I threw jabs back and forth at each other all the time. But if you ever heard about Cash the German Shepherd, I've got her. Yeah, she's my dog now. So, but on behalf of the
That's going to conclude this portion of the service. We'll be loading Terry into the ambulance. Procession will go out to Magnus Cemetery. Will be led by the police department, the sheriff's office, fire trucks, family vehicles, fire trucks and emergency vehicles. We'd like for y'all to fall in behind.